Hey everybody, I was going to show you today how to sorry, create a reusable stencil with either your Silhouette or your Cricut for when you're painting signs. I've already got my design created here in my Silhouette studio. When you're doing a reusable sign or reusable stencil to make a sign, you have to create bridges to all the inner pieces of your letters. Or you have to place them by hand, which is really annoying. So I always slice little lines to create bridges. In Silhouette you can use your knife tool, which is right over here, and just literally slice across to create those little bridges. I'd like to do it to all the middles of my letters and anywhere that the letter is like right here, I'm trying to think of how to say it. There is going to be a flap like in any of the script font, anywhere, sorry, if there's not a middle of a letter, it does create a, for lack of a better word, a flap that stands up and can easily be ripped or torn. So I'm going through and adding extra because I already cut this stencil once, but like I said, it had a lot of little flaps everywhere that made it kind of hard to cut. So I'm going back and just adding extra bridges. But once you've got all your bridges done, I like to send it to my mat. And I cut it on the stencil material setting over here. I use the 4 milliliter, whatever. I'm terrible at this. The 4 I think it's millimeter. Mylar Stencil material. I'll drop a link down in the description below. To Amazon of the ones that I use, but I set it to the stencil material. This is a 3-2-33 in one pass. Usually it cuts clear for me. I don't have any snags or anything as long as I have plenty of bridges. And I've got I cut it on my Silhouette mat. I'll show you what the Mylar looks like. It's stuck to my mat because I was getting ready to cut this. The Mylar, oops, I got a piece of tape on it. Mylar is clear plastic feeling material. It's kind of like the material that comes over the Silhouette and Cricut mats, the plastic cover. It kind of feels like that, or like shrink-heat ink material. But you'll just cut your your Mylar to the size that you're wanting to cut your stencil to. Make sure it's got plenty of like extra room on the sides, so that way you have plenty of space for your stencil to hang over, so that when you're painting your stencil that it has plenty of space. So I don't have this set up on my Silhouette yet, so I'm going to get that set up and cut out using these settings, and then be ready to paint. Okay, and here I've got my stencil cut out. This is my original stencil, and you can see this has a flappy. I didn't have enough bridges like right here, and I didn't leave myself room over here, so I cut off the edge. But I'm going to go ahead and use this stencil for this. When I'm doing wood signs with these stencils like this, I always use a stencil brush to paint with. They're flat on the very end. And I just dab it in the paint and get all the excess off, and then dab lightly with very little paint to actually paint the sign. I'm going to be using color Manta Ray by Sea Paint. Sea Paint is my absolute favorite paint to use for everything. it dries super quick. There's no odors, no harsh chemicals. It's all around a pretty awesome paint to use. You can do so much with it. They have a secrets line that can be used as a stain, a highlighter, a glaze, a paint. It's pretty crazy. But like I said, I just dab it in the paint. I don't get very much paint on the brush at all. Very, very little, and I dab all my extra off. And because I don't have enough bridges on this one, I'm going to have to hold down the stencil in several places. But like I said, I just lightly dab. I do very, very, very light coats. I can always go back and add more. And that's one of the biggest things, is to make sure you do it in light coats. Since there is nothing there to actually seal it. I just have my edges taped down. I don't actually use adhesive spray or anything when I am doing these stencils. I'm always scared that it's going to be too stuck and pull up paint. And I would rather just not have to deal with that. I usually only make these Mylar stencils like this for signs that I make a lot of. My custom pieces, obviously, I still use what is that stuff called? The Ormask 813 stencil film. Just because it's cheap and easy to use for me anyway, to create my stencils for those one-off designs or something I don't do very, very often. But doing the stencils like this, it saves me a lot of time in weeding and cutting. It does take a little bit longer for me because I have to dab on my design, versus where if it's an adhesive stencil, I can just brush it on. But for me, the time saved in cutting and weeding is well worth it. And plus it creates less waste. I'm not cutting a single stencil for every single sign that I make, which does add up in cost as well, not just time. Anywhere I can save time and money, I try to, because I do this as a business, and time is money, and money is what everybody is after, it seems. I don't want to be out more money than I'm bringing in. So that's basically the gist of that part. Okay, now that I've got the entire stencil painted, I'm going to just peel my stencil off, which that part was super easy. It's not hard to set this. I won't paint on anything. And then I'm left with all my little white lines where my bridges were. So I take a thin paintbrush like this and just go back in, getting just a little bit of paint on the tip there, and just go back in and touch up my lines. And sometimes I have to do it twice, just depending on how heavy my coat was of paint on the actual letters, so the lines might still be a little bit lighter. But I just go through and touch all those up really quick. And then I am left with a beautiful sign, and I can reuse that stencil over and over and over. And to clean them, I usually just take like Dawn dish soap and warm water and lightly rub off the excess paint. It doesn't always come off all the way, but it doesn't hinder using the stencil again. I have some that I've used dozens of times and they are caked with paint. It's just personal preference on how clean you want your stencil to stay. I usually do so many signs with the same stencil over and over that by the time I'm done with that batch of signs, it's pretty caked up with paint. So, but it's super easy to do. They're super easy to use, and like I said earlier, it saves so much time and for me so much money, not cutting hundreds of the same exact stencils over and over and over for my more popular designs, or if I have a large order of signs, the exact same design anyway. If you have any questions, you can feel free to comment below, and I'll try to answer everybody's questions as they come in. And I will, like I said, link in the comments tools that I use, the Mylar Stencil material, and all of that fun stuff. So that way you all can find it. I always buy everything just about on Amazon. But voila! Beautiful sign. And Mylar Stencil. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more DIY and how-tos for painting your own wood signs.